I've noticed something really interesting about older people. It seems to me that they either fit one of two polar opposites. Either they are incredibly grumpy and angry with life and love to complain about stuff, or I find old people that are just the sweetest, most easygoing, most stress-free people that you can possibly imagine. Welcome back to the Nomad's Notebook podcast. As always, my name is Joe Maxwell. One of the really amazing things about my day job is I get to interact with a lot of people. And I always enjoy meeting new people because it allows me to learn new things and kind of combat this ignorance, right? I think it's really important in life. I heard someone say it recently, just the idea of combating ignorance. And I think one of the ways we can do this is obviously through reading, but through meeting new people and a lot of different types of people. That's why I like my job, or that's one of the reasons I like my job. That's also one of the reasons I like traveling, is it just puts me in contact with so many random people. So in work, I get to spend a lot of time with different age groups of people, some young people, but also a lot of old and retired people too, who come from all over the country, right? Because I live in kind of a more rural area that's probably seen as primarily more of a retirement community. And I've noticed something really interesting about older people. It seems to me that they either fit one of two polar opposites. Either they are incredibly grumpy and angry with life and love to complain about stuff. And I'm in a service business too, so if someone wants to complain, then I'm certainly going to hear about it. That's one side of the equation. Or I find old people that are just the sweetest, most easygoing, most stress-free people that you can possibly imagine. Polar opposites. On the grumpy side, I've been wondering if maybe that's partially a reaction to just the reality of life, and that life is sad at the end of the day. And, I assume, speaking from someone who's very young, but I can't imagine getting old is a very pleasant process, at least physically, maybe intellectually, with more development and more depth of relationships if you're investing in people. But physically, it can't be very nice to, see your hair fall out and see new wrinkles develop, feel joint pains that you never felt, and get ill. Like, none of that is very pleasant. So I wonder if some people are just responding to the harsh realities of life, and when they're becoming more grumpy and more willing to complain as they get older. But then on the flip side, why are some people so sweet? And I think it comes down to life trajectory. If you meet an old person, say 70 or 80 years old, they've had a whole lot of time on whatever life path they're on. So someone who's really easygoing, maybe when they were younger, they made a conscious effort to not let the things that were out of their control stress and bother them, to continually invest in relationships and continually put love and good things out into the world. That's a pattern they set when they were younger. And they just stayed on that path as they aged. And it was kind of like this concept of compound interest, right? It's tiny little changes day after day, but you look at the difference between someone who's 20 and someone who's 80, who's been on the same path that whole time, there's going to be a big difference. They set a good pattern. Now they're in a pretty great place when they're older. And likewise, if you have a younger person who maybe has some negative thought patterns when they're younger, but they're not overly dark or anything, but they just don't go to the trouble of correcting those thought patterns, it just never changes, and it slowly compounds over time to the point where they're just a monster when they get older, and no one wants to be around them because they're so unpleasant to be around. So the takeaway here is, if you're a young person, which most of my audience is going to be young, I want you to consciously set the right trajectory in your life. Don't sweat the small things. Don't get wrapped up in things that you can't control. Continually invest in the relationships of those around you. Take a minute to breathe sometimes and just enjoy the present moment, because ultimately the patterns and the habits you set when you're 15, 20, even 30 years old are going to compound again and again and again when you reach old age. And you want to set yourself up to be the type of person that people enjoy being around.